You know, I really didn't think Roger Goodell could sink any lower than 3 years straight of Black Anthem. But this, it takes the fucking cake. I'm calling it now. NFL owners, grow a set of cojones and perform a bloodless coup to get rid of him once and for all. I left a link in the description as to what I'm talking about. But long story short, he's making the Super Bowl a fucking Pride Night game. Yeah, you heard me right. Once again, Roger Goodell's desire for rating and woke people pleasing is going to bite him in the fucking ass. This is going to be one of the worst games of all time. And not in terms of quality, but not in terms of game quality, regardless of who gets into the bowl, but in terms of the promotional tactic. How many times do I have to take a club, a metaphorical club, and beat you over the head with it, Roger? How many times do I have to come on here and metaphorically bludgeon you by telling you no one wants any woke people pleasing bullshit incorporated into football? You keep this bullshit up, and people are just going to say fuck you to the NFL and go straight to the UFL. They'll be beginning this spring. How many times do we have to teach you this, Roger? This is probably the most disgusting promotional tactic you've done. I may not have many an issue with the LGBTQT. Again, I have a younger sister who's a lesbian and a younger cousin who recently went through a gay marriage. But that does not justify signaling them out and giving them a pride night at the Super Bowl. I swear when Trump gets back in, Roger, your head is on the metaphorical chopping block. Funding cuts. Especially when the channels that provide your football coverage, many of their bigwigs are going to lose massive financial gains in 25 because their executives are going to get locked up and throw away the fucking key for their wokeness. You want to play ball like that, Roger? I've got a ball for you. It's called a monster's ball. As far as I'm concerned, you need to be sent to the loony bin. I'm willing to call the guys with the white coats, the nets, and the tranks to knock you out and put you in a nice padded room, tied up in a straitjacket. No food, no water, no sunlight. So you sit there and think about how stupid you've been behaving with, with these decisions. But then again, you're the kind of people pleaser who will do anything to sweep fan backlash under the rug as long as you get money. You know what? Here's my response to that, Goodell. Pew, 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 pew. Fuck you. Because trust me when I say this, 3 weeks' time, you're going to have your lowest TV ratings in Super Bowl history if you go through with this. And yes, even lower than Super Bowl 55, which was stymied by COVID. Because what you've been doing, Roger, makes me sick. It legitimately makes me sick that you're turning Super Bowl Sunday into a fucking Pride Night. Which begs the question, why didn't you do it during the regular season? Huh? Why didn't you do it then instead of waiting until the big one to do it? Either way, you're dropping the biggest piece of shit on the Super Bowl for this one on with this tactic. It's not gonna end well in the end. It's not gonna play out well, especially when you have a GOP governor in office in Nevada, not a liberal one. I mean, I am fully aware there is a massive that the Vegas LGBTQT population makes up about, let's see, for those wondering, I'm using the Williams Institute at UCLA. See. Nevada's population is made up of 5.5% of LGBTQT. But here's the other issue with this. And for those wondering, yes, I'm using the Williams Institute info from UCLA. I know, not a trusted source, but I gotta take what I can get here with this. 53% of Nevada's LGBT commute, it's female. You could actually be drawing more than half of that populace away from the big game. So let's see. See, 5.5%. Let me see. You would essentially be driving away a little less than 3% of the state populace. I mean, yeah, on paper that's not a big number, but to the demographic you're trying to cater to, that's more than half of it. Now, keep in mind, I am not part of the demographic Roger is trying to cater to, but I'm just trying to make a point here. Roger, you really are the living epitome of the stupidity behind the philosophy of get woke, go broke. And like I said, yeah, Marcos, this shit again. Yes, Raphael, I do miss when football was just football. I mean, seriously. We all know that Roger Goodell is a deep state puppet. I think all the commissioners are to varying levels. But out of the four commissioners of North American major sports, excuse me a minute, Gary Bettman of the National Hockey League. He's probably the least likely to be the puppet because he doesn't really push the woke agenda all that much. Then you got Bob Manfred, who's okay, but he's still overkill wishy washy at times. But he's still unbearably wishy washy when situations come to it. Adam Silver, he's bad. Adam Silver, he's bad because he also aided and abetted in the woke people pleasing crap, specifically during the George Floyd fiasco during the COVID bubble scene, the back end of the COVID bubble shit. But Roger Goodell has been doing this the longest, which makes him by far the worst. So yeah, essentially, Bettman is a combination of Othniel, Ehud, and Deborah. Manfred is Gideon. Silver's Jephthah, and Manfred is Samson. For those who don't get it, it's the six major players in the book in the biblical book of the Judges, a book that basically describes Israel's downward spiral, that would ancient Israel's downward spiral into depravity when they failed to drive the Canaanites out of out of their land, out of the promised land, and slowly but surely became more and more like the Canaanites. They would go through a cycle of idol worship, getting abused, repenting, God raising a savior, liberation, peace, and then back to depravity. Over and beginning in chapter 3 of the book, and this is especially through chapters 3 through 16, 12 judges would rise up. Six of them we don't know much about outside of their families. Well, one of them, Elimelech, was a bad judge, got killed when a stone fell on his head. But the first three we get major message of are Othniel, Ehud, and Deborah, all of who take part in epic and bloody battles, or have defeat the oppressor, or have someone help them kill the oppressor. In Judges 6 through 16, we look at the next three major judges, but it focuses more on their character flaws. Gideon starts off as a coward, but he comes to trust that God will help him out in winning a battle over the Midianites. Unfortunately, Gideon's got a short fuse, and he kills some Israelites who didn't help him. And it gets worse when he makes a Upix garb, a priest guard for himself, makes one, and then uses some gold they had ransacked from another battle to build an idol, and well, and people start worshiping it, and it just gets worse. It just goes all downhill from there. Jephthah is an illegitimate son who's living up in the mountains. And ironically enough, he's not commissioned by God. He's commissioned by the elders of Israel to help him out against the Ammonites. But this leads to a trade off. Jephthah is not familiar with God, and he basically treats him like a Canaanite deity, making this stupid vow where if he wins the battle, the first thing that comes out of his house will be sacrificed to God. And unfortunately, it's his daughter. The fate of the daughter is dependent on how you want to look at it. Some texts say that she died 4 days after she was allowed, died 4 days after the vow was made and she walked out of the house. So because she wanted 4 days of bereavement that she will never have children. Another says that she took 2.5 months up in the mountains and gave her life to God in a different way. Again, it's debatable, but I'm more in league with the form line of thinking. The last judge, and the one that's most talked about with this book, is Samson, and by far he is the worst. His life starts off with promise, but he doesn't have any regard for God's plan or promise in his life. He's violent, promiscuous, and unbearably arrogant, believing that and pretty much a loner. And his promiscuity, and he breaks all the covenant vows of a Nazarite: no alcohol, no haircuts, and no touching of dead animals. He breaks every cup portion of it, and no touching dead animal parts. For those who are wondering where the last one comes from, the donkey jawbone story. And of course, the other two tie into each other. And it's only in the final hour he begs God to forgive him and give him his strength back for one last rush. And he does, killing 3,000 Philistines at, in a rush of mass murder at the expense of his life and his integrity. And this is where Roger falls into this perspective. He no longer has any regard or it's to his faith, if he had any. He's given in to the influence of money, political clout, and it makes me sick. Which is why I've been calling for the owners to rise up and perform a bloodless coup on this son of a bitch. Well, I don't want Goodell dead. I do want him replaced. I do want this motherfucker replaced, but not with Jerry Jones. That would actually be worst case scenario. Nor do I want David Tepper or John Mara running the ship. So, yeah, that's what's got me a little more under the collar. Can you blame me on this? No. Never heard of him. But if he were still running things, he would not allow this bull. But if he were still alive, let me just check if he's dead. Let's see. Paul Taga. Okay, still alive. 82 years old. 83 years old. But if he were still running things, I don't think he'd allow any of this dog shit to happen. Problem? He might. Why? His son in law is a political deep state operative, specifically John D. Rockefeller the Fifth. Not to mention that his son is openly gay. But that said, between him and Goodell, Talbig would have been the lesser of two evils if he'd still wanted to keep running the ship. Because the way Goodell's going, he's crashing it into a fucking iceberg. Comment, like, sub. I'm done for this. Goodbye and good night. Bang.